Now, why do I think it's important? We would come here, have a discussion about modernity, about what we do to ensure that we imbibe modernity in our law practices. But it's very easy to leave here, have a lot of excitement, have a lot of energy, and then you pack up, you write notes, you pack it up, and then it's done. It happens to all of us a lot of the times. And therefore, I just wanted to put us in the mood by reminding all of us, there are a lot of things that we already know, why we are seated here in the first place. We are seated here because we need to recognize that there are changing times. The trends that are impacting our legal profession, we cannot not make a change. We cannot not respond. And therefore, I'm hoping that just reminding all of us about why we are here will strengthen our resolve to ensure that we take whatever our learnings here into action. Now, there are three things that I'm going to talk about. And I'm talking about them because, they irk me, for want of a better word. So you probably see me in my car in the mornings and I'll probably be talking to myself and be wondering what's wrong with this lady. Some of the musings that go through my head as I drop my son off at school, I go to work. Now these three things have got to do with globalization, the new African, and technology. We all know that we can't escape globalization. In fact, technology has made it such that life, there are no borders anymore. We cannot escape that. But what is the impact that irks me? Is that because of that, we have a situation where you have particularly the international law firms, they zoom in and out. Of course, there are some of the things that we can't escape, especially when it comes to governing law. For example, it's English law. You can't help it but have the international law firms coming to do a certain bit of work. But what irks me is that they are part of, they are generating income from their countries, they are generating income from our countries, but what do? We are basically like poor relations, and then we are peeping at them, looking through their, the door, seeing what they're doing. But we are not able to actually participate in their industry. So what does that mean? That means that the pie that we have can slowly be dwindling. And if that doesn't push you to see the need to imbibe modernity into your law practice, then I don't know what else will. So it's very important that we think about that. The other thing that I think is important to note is that wave of Pan-Africanism that we all feel. Now, it's a Pan-Africanism that is probably buoyed by the AFCFTA, but all of us, I get a sense of, you look at my hair, look at people, of course, they're all wearing suits here. But on a Friday, you see people excited about wearing their African clothing, and that shows that there's a sense of, let us embrace our identity. But it is not enough for us to embrace our identity and to forget the opportunities that are burgeoning, particularly because of the AFCFTA. But if we are not careful, if we do not imbibe modernity into our practice, what will happen? Again, the international law firms, I'm sorry I'm on them, luckily none of them are in the room, it's just us. They will come and they have their Africa practices. The last time there was an international awards, African Legal Awards, and I found that for the law firms that were African law firms of the year, some of them were Allen and Overy's, Clifford Chance, and I'm like, what has that got to do with Africa? But the reality of the matter is that, talk as I may, rant as I may, the reality is that they have a value proposition that they are selling. They're able to demonstrate that they are more efficient. They're able to demonstrate that they have their capacity in terms of numbers, their capacity in terms of their technical expertise. So we can't run away from that. But how do we respond is the key thing. We cannot let 60 years, the 60-year idea of AFCFTA happen, and then we'll be seated here and all we realize that the international law firms will come zooming in and come and take our business. So if that doesn't push you to think, I really need to do something about making my law practice modern, then I don't know what else will do that. Now also, technology, I think we all recognize that we were all, the legal profession, we're just basically ambling into the legal profession of the future. But COVID, of course, just shocked all of us, and now we are in it. And now that we are in it, we have to recognize that that comes along with it, automation of services, commoditization of legal services. Again, the things that we used to think were complex, the things that we used to be premium services now have become commoditized services. If we do not become innovative, and if we do not imbibe modernity into our practices, like I said again, we'll be there, and even the fight for survival will be difficult. Now, what does all of this mean for law firm partners who I believe are seated here, for associates, and particularly for the legal industry? you should be concerned about your competitive advantage. You should be concerned about the fact that if you do not imbibe modernity and innovation in your practices, you would it's not just going to be about profitability, you will not even survive. So it's important to appreciate that. And what I find is an opportunity for young people as associates is that because we need innovation and modernity, that is why we need you in our organizations. So if you go into a law firm, some people go into a law firm, they complain and that they don't have a computer and they don't have this. Yes, they may not have all of that. They don't do things the right way. You were taught this at school, and what's happening? It's for you also. It's also an opportunity to be that person who pushes your senior. Of course, you have to push them, gingerly. There's a way of pushing people to do things. You don't go and tell them, this is how it's done, this is how it's done. This is a way of doing that. If you have, interpersonal skills, you find a way of doing it. But you could be that energy, that change in the organization, I think is important. Now, for the legal industry, I always say that it's easy to say that a few law firms are modern law firms, and that could be our competitive advantage. But it's not right. If we need to build a legal industry, then we need to build an industry where all of us are at a certain level of our practice standards. And therefore, when we come and have this conversation with you, it's not to say that it's us and them. We are really excited and really want that all law firms would also imbibe modernity. And if there's any way in which we're able to do that, this is one of the things that we can do. And if we do build a strong legal industry, then we become an economic force. Because you find that when for lawyers, I don't think that when they are doing for example, government of Ghana is having a budget, they come and really consult us. Who consults you? Nobody consults you because you're not an economic force. What you do is that you talk human rights, you talk regulation, all of that are important, but we are not an economic force. We will be an economic force if we build a strong legal industry. Now, I hope I put you in a mood. That's what I was trying to do. I hope I put you in the mood. And now, what does all of this mean for what I'm supposed to talk about, the client and time management? It means that in a globalized industry, with burgeoning opportunities, particularly on the continent, how we manage our clients and how we use arguably the most important resource apart from our brain power, which is our time, efficiently, is very key to our competitiveness, is key to our survival, and if we push harder, our eventual success. Now, everybody has a client, different categories of clients, whether they're individuals, whether they are governments, whether they are the international organizations. Now, the client of today has a certain DNA, and it is recognizing that DNA that will help you to structure what kind of client management strategy that your organization should pursue. So most clients now are informed. They're informed. Before they come to you, they're coming to you for investment advice. They've checked out the Free Zones Act. They've checked out the GIPC Act. So what value are you bringing to them? So constantly, you're thinking to yourself, what value am I giving to them? They are business and industry savvy. Of course, they understand their business if they are a corporate client. They understand their business, they understand the industry even more than you do. So if you want to be able to manage your client better, then you have to understand the industry and business of your client. They have options. They have options. If they come to law firm 1, they can go to law firm 2, they can go to law firm 3. So it's not like it used to be before where there are just 2, 3, 4 law firms that can do a certain type of work. Now, largely, apart from some areas of specialization, most law firms can do a certain type of work. They are working with a time frame, and their claims trigger happy. Now, if you would note, clients who are coming to you are asking to be negotiating the negligence clauses. They are asking what is the cover of your professional indemnity. They want all of it. They are asking all of these questions, and they are nitpicking on what is the definition of misconduct, what is the definition of recklessness. That means that they want to put themselves in a position where if you misadvise, they are going straight to make their claim, and it's important for us to appreciate. And they have an uncompromising loyalty to the bottom line. How much money can I save? So at the end of the day, you have a client who wants so much, is looking for value, is looking for the best, but at the same time wants to pay, doesn't want to pay as much as they used to. So it's a very tricky thing, but that is the DNA of the client that we are talking about. Now, client management is not fluff. A lot of times people think it's fluff. Okay, sending cards on the client's birthday, making sure that you send a cake to the client. I'm not saying that is not important. It adds to it. But client management goes to your profitability and your bottom line. I just want to go through very briefly some of the key things about client management. Also, I know that when we talk about client management, a lot of times people think that the cycle will start from when you actually get the client. But for me, it starts from when the inquiry stage, because the whole experience is important. So how do you deal with the client when even they come to you with an inquiry? Whether it's by email, whether it's by any of those virtual platforms, or whether they walk in physically. How do you do that? One of the key things that I have found useful and I want to share is that I always investigate the client. I'm not talking about KYC. If I have a client coming in, let's say it's an American client, I want to appreciate what their business is. I want to read, nowadays nobody's incognito, you can find out about everybody, what school they went to, whether they have, sometimes you find all of that information, because at the end of the day, you are trying to build chemistry. So you're trying to build chemistry with somebody, and the way you build chemistry is to speak what they find interesting. So you come into my office, of course you're coming for investment advice, but by the time I finish having that conversation with you, you feel like, okay, we've bonded. And that in itself is a good launch pad to the client relationship. The other thing that you also have to appreciate are the cultural nuances. So, for example, you find that if you're dealing with an American client who likes to see you smiling and we're all pretending and you're laughing and they feel that open and transparency shows that you are sincere. You deal with a Russian client who thinks that a smile without a reason means that you're an idiot. So Mr. Vladimir Popov comes in, and because you were smiling and laughing with Mr. Goodberry, who's from Texas, you think that you'll be using the same smile. Probably what the Russian person is looking for you to do to break the ice is probably to tell them how much you hate America, or to tell them that they're doing very well in Ukraine. What I'm saying is that cultural nuances are also important. And if you really want to, right from the very beginning, establish that chemistry, then all of that is necessary for you to do. The other thing that I'll talk about is, of course, the obligations as accountable institutions under the Anti-Money Laundering Act. We shouldn't take that for granted. Doing the necessary KYCs, making sure that you've taken the information, that the LI has all the list of the type of information you're supposed to collect. So you have to ensure that your KYC forms are reflective of that. Then your engagement, how you negotiate your terms of engagement, very important. Now, a lot of times we think that it's not a take it or leave it kind of position. Now clients are negotiating, like I said, they're negotiating terms, they're negotiating, frustration clauses, they're negotiating, things that they were not negotiating before. And money especially can be a key point of conflict, of complaint, and therefore it's very important that when you're negotiating all of that, be very clear what the fees are. Be very clear that if work goes out of scope, this is what will happen. Be very clear in your fee codes what is the scope of work you're doing. Be very clear what work in progress would entail. All of that, very important. Then of course also the execution of the work itself. That is a major part of the client management. Because as they say the eating of the, how did they say it? The sweetness of the pudding is in the eating. Yes. So no matter what promise you make the client, no matter how great you are, no matter what chemistry you build with them, if in the execution things go bad and they realize that you have overrated yourself, you say that you are an excellent transactional lawyer, but you're not. All of that would be discovered at the execution stage. So even if you don't know, at that point, you make it a point to make sure that if it's a senior or somebody else that you can ask for support or assistance to do that, but you don't go in and do anything watery, because at that point the client will feel like, what a disappointment. Billing and costs, my senior will talk about that, I won't do that. Complaint handling and crisis management, very important. Now a lot of times, people feel that if you are upfront with the client and tell them that you can complain, they will come whining and whining and whining, so people don't want to do that. But what I find is very useful that right from the beginning, you tell the client, or as part of your terms of engagement, the pack, is to tell them this is how you complain. So if you're unhappy with me, if you're unhappy with the person on the brief, you can speak to this person. If that person doesn't work, on and on and on, so that the client knows right from the beginning what the complaint handling procedures will be. That puts them at ease. It doesn't open the door to conflict. That's what I find. Then also, remember that your assessment of client satisfaction should be client-driven. It's not about what you think should make the client happy. So at the end of the day, at the end of a matter, you try and find whether there's a client survey or a debriefing with the client to get an understanding of what went well and what didn't go so well, so that you can use that feedback into the client relationship and we can only get better. But also, of course, as part of the client relationship, you can suspend and terminate work. There are some clients who come to you, and especially you may have a difficult client. There's no problem with having a difficult client. We have a client who probably is treating your associates, speaking to them anyhow. You can decide that, you know what, you're not worth that money that you are giving me, because you can't just come to my office and speak to my associates anyhow. I can accept you're being difficult. So there are times when you can make that call and decide that as part of the client management process, I want you to also exit. Then remember that from that client, you're always looking for the next piece of work. So the next piece of work being that if the client came to you for a labor matter, don't assume that if he has a transactions issue, he'll come to you. He may not be aware that you do that. So you find that the client has come to you, you're doing labor for him. The client is in another law firm, is doing litigation. Of course, law firms have different specialties and have different levels of expertise. I understand that. But I'm saying that accepting that, sometimes you can lose business because you don't get the next piece of work from the client, or you don't cross-sell, or use that opportunity to get another referral. The other thing that I want to talk about, which I think is often overlooked when it comes to client management, is about risk management. It's risk management. Now, you recall, I think we all recall, we're all in this country, the Panama Papers. A key part of the client management is confidentiality. A lot of times when we think about confidentiality, we're thinking about, I'm not going to tell my wife about it. I'm not going to tell my best friend about it. But if your IT systems are not robust and rigorous, then you have opened yourself to a breach of confidentiality. So you have a system where, yes, you haven't told your wife about it, you haven't told your friend about it, but your IT systems are compromised. And what does this mean for managing partners, junior associates? There should be business continuity planning, very important. There should be business continuity testing. So in your organization, once in a while, you do some penetration tests to see how robust or how rigorous are IT systems. Because can you imagine the fallout if there's a hack in the organization? That would be so, what word should I use? It would be so catastrophic, for want of a better word. And remember that the reason why law firms are such an exciting target for hackers is that instead of having to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 companies at a go, I come to your law firm, you have 1,000 clients, and I'm accessing all of them at the same time. So we are a really exciting place for hackers. So please do remember that, and it's a crucial part of the client management process. Of course, there are some nice to-dos, useful to-dos, the legal alerts, the free training, the client visits. I find that the client visits are very, very powerful, where you ask the client, I want to come and visit your organization. Sometimes if it's a manufacturing plant, I want to come and see your plant, I just want to come and see how things work. That process can be a very bonding process, because you find that as human beings, and remember we are human beings, even as a corporate entity, it is being run by human beings. You want to be with people who find you interesting, who are interested in what you do. It's fundamental to human nature. And therefore, if you find a law firm that wants to bother to understand your business, can you imagine? That law firm is sold. There's the burnout, we are tired, too much workload. And then there's also the ISENs, the people who stay in the office when you are all the lights are off, but you see a small light, and they are there. You don't really know what is happening. And then the person is like, oh, or he or she is so loaded and all of that. But I would say that iService, there's empirical data. Timesheet. Timesheet is such a powerful way of determining what somebody is doing. Because the funny thing is that even if the person wants to show what they did during the day, and they want to claim that they spent 12 hours in the office, they can't write that they spent 4 hours on an email. Because immediately, yes, I see that you have timesheets that show that you spent whatever 200 hours in the week, but I drill down and I see that then if you're actually telling me that you spent 4 hours on that email, then your productivity is suspect. So people will not typically falsify or enhance timesheets, and it's a very good way of assessing who is doing iService and who is actually working. So I encourage people, let your associates timesheets, very important. As a formula for billing, my senior partner will talk about it. Then as a measure of opportunity cost, we only have 24 hours in a day, and we are not awake all of that, and we're supposed to sleep. And any time you spend doing one thing, you lose that time doing another. And it's important that you find a way of balancing the priorities. One of the things that I find is that when associates come into a law firm, they are afraid to say that, you ask them, giving them work, they're afraid to say, I can't take this on. Because they're trying to make their point, they're trying to impress you. But as a law firm manager or as a law firm partner, it is your duty to explain to your associates that, you know what, yes, time management, all the things I talked about, don't do iService, all of that. But if you are overburdened, please let us know so that we have a way of managing your workload. If you don't tell them, they're most likely never ever going to complain. And then all you see is that one day your good associates, they are there in your office, as sometimes happens, when they come and they're holding a white envelope, and I'm like, okay, what is it? Oh, Isabel, da 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 da, and the person goes away. And then you might do an exit interview and you find out that the person felt that there was too much going on. And that is the reason why the person left. And you don't want to invest your time and energy in training associates and they will leave because of something that if you had communicated to them about how they can manage it, they would have seen. I think that's important. Now, identifying priorities, identifying what is urgent, between what is urgent and what is important. There's some things that are urgent and important, of course they have to be done. There are some things that are urgent but not important. You may be able to delegate. There are some things that are important but not urgent. So it's important. I want to develop a strategy, a business development strategy. It's important. But on the balance, if I have a client before me who has an emergency, I can't be saying that, I'm finishing up my business development strategy and therefore that should wait. So having that ability to balance and prioritize is also very, very important. Yes. Then there are simple things to do, as moving away from the law firm, responsibility of the law firm. There are simple things that you can do as an individual lawyer. We all have to first assess what kind of person. Are you a procrastinator? Are you a now person, or you're in between? So if you know what kind of person you are, then that should inform you in terms of the kind of your time management strategy that you develop for yourself. But whatever you are, whatever type of person you are, for me, I realize to-do lists are important. To-do lists always will help you. You can't categorize them into what is urgent, what is important. It's simple things, using the reminder feature on your phone. We all have that. But the thing is that the features are there, but we don't use them. You don't even put it in to say that, let me be reminded about this. It's important. Give yourself lead time on assignments. A lot of times you might see associates stressed there, and then you ask, they were given the work about 2 weeks ago. Then they decided, okay, for whatever reason, then they're doing it in the last 3 days, and it's like the world is coming to an end, and you are a cruel senior for doing this and doing that. But they had lead time to do it. Recognizing and adapting to working as a team. There are some people who don't know how to work as a team, and therefore they don't know how to, if they're having challenges, to have a team member to support them in the work that they do. Of course, there will be emergencies that you can't plan for. If there are emergencies that you can't plan for, there's nothing you can do. But when all of this fails, when your to-do list fails, when all your planning fails, then what do? You just have to brace yourself and hold your nose and get the job done like we all do. Lastly, in closing, I just want to say finally that you need to build a culture around this. Otherwise, it will be a one-off thing. Some days you do your timesheet, some days you don't do your timesheet, some days you have a client management meeting, some days you don't have a client management meeting. And if you think about it, I think it was Peter Drucker said that culture will eat strategy for breakfast. So even if strategy will be eaten for breakfast, can you imagine if you do things off the cuff? One day you do it, the next day you do it. So whatever client management strategy you develop, whatever time management strategy you develop, I would encourage you to document it, to write it down, to make sure that there's training in your organization, everybody understands that this is the way we do things, and then you continuously do training until it becomes part of the DNA of the organization. So thank you very much. I'll be open to questions if there are questions. Thank you.